What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY in the overall markets. I'm going to talk about some very key levels to watch for as time goes on, especially as we're seeing Tesla approaching some very key levels and some big news involving Donald Trump and Jerome Powell. But just know that I'm not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, let's talk about some key levels. So, as far as Tesla and the market are going, as you guys can see, Tesla has seen its share price just dump like crazy for the last couple of weeks. We've had about 5 straight red weeks for Tesla, just dipping and dipping and dipping. And this is continuing to look relatively weak compared to the markets, especially as we're seeing our price-peers ratio down. However, one thing that's worth mentioning is that Tesla dumped really hard on the daily chart, and we came down to fill this gap over here. I know it's a little hard to see. There's a tiny gap over here. And yes, there's another one down here which could get filled in the future. But what typically happens to Tesla is after we fill gaps and after we hit a big support, especially at that 250 area, which is where we have that support, we typically see Tesla try to rebound at least to some extent. And I think there's a good chance it might see a temporary bounce before it starts dumping even lower. I'm going to break down exactly why that is, right? We have some bullish divergence trying to develop, and we have other reasons to think that there might be an attempt to rebound. But in order for that to happen, we have to watch some key levels. I'm going to be very unbiased when talking about Tesla, so I'll break down the levels and everything like that in a little bit later into this video. I just want to first talk about what's happening with Tesla news and also news involving Donald Trump and Jerome Powell. So the first thing is that we have some good news that came out this weekend. We have TD Cowen analysts coming out, giving Tesla a buy rating, increasing their price targets from $180 to about $388 per share, implying that Tesla has a lot of upside potential moving forward. And they gave their same reasons. It's not just because of their sales decline that makes them that kind of like changes a lot of views for Tesla, but they believe that that's not really the biggest thing that's going on, at least for the time being. They said that there's no shortage of challenges that's going on this year, but they believe that Tesla will make a very strong comeback with the unsupervised FSD that's going to be launching in Texas very soon. They also believe that their autonomous revenue is going to once again offset all of this. So yes, sales are slowing, but we're seeing different analysts that are very excited about the robotaxi, and they believe that the news that's coming out should help the share price to a larger extent. They also believe there's more than 50% upside for Tesla very soon, so that's a good piece of news. Now, despite that, Wedbush also gave Tesla an outperform rating. They have good price targets on it. They have some of the highest, if anything, believing it's going to run to the 400s as well. So we're getting some good news finally. The price-peers ratio is still down quite a bit, which means that Tesla is still weak compared to the market. But I would like to see if we get some kind of rebound here or not, a small little increase for a bounce or not. And then we'll see if it dumps even more later on. So I'll talk more about that. Historically, Mondays are green about 52.54% of the time for Tesla historically. And then we tend to see more volatility around noon and also around 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We tend to see a lot more volatility. Besides that, I'm not seeing anything else that's too crazy in terms of our news, but there is some good news coming out from these analysts about their price targets. Now, whether or not we see a bounce in the markets or if the market dumps may also depend on Donald Trump. As a reminder, on March 4th, he imposed more tariffs on Canada and Mexico. But then on March 5th, he gave a 1-month exemption for many of the tariffs for automakers that qualify for the USMCA regulations, right? If they qualify for that, if they kind of like comply with those regulations, then yes, they're going to once again see an exemption, at least for many of these automakers. Then on March 6th, just a couple of days ago, Donald Trump came out and he imposed 25% tariffs on many different countries and many different tariffs, at least for Canada. So that includes like Mexico and Canada. He also says that he wants to impose more reciprocal tariffs starting on April 2nd. So keep that in mind. He claims that he was making progress on border security and things like that, as he had a long conversation with the president of Mexico. And then he claims there's been a lot of progress. They have a great relationship and they've been doing a great job at improving their situations. So he believes border security and factors like that are what influenced him to do that. And for now, we're seeing tariffs being delayed. So that's a very big piece of news. Now, for this week, keep in mind that we also have news coming out involving more tariffs. So we're expecting another 25% tariff increase for steel imports and also aluminum to be following the trend. It's going to be affecting countries that trade these products, especially Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, Japan, Mexico, South Korea, and the list goes on. And then he also mentioned that each of the countries is now going to be required to adhere to the 25% tariff on these imports. So keep that in mind. However, guys, one thing you have to know about Donald Trump is that he likes to use these tariffs for negotiations. So the tariffs are not always guaranteed. So, for example, like if you look at the tariffs that came out for Mexico and Canada, yes, he imposes them, then he starts to negotiate, he makes his phone calls, they form more deals, and then the tariffs get delayed or something else happens. There's been a lot of instances where that ended up happening, right? Happened to Mexico, it happened to some auto products, and the list goes on. So in this case, I just want to make it very clear that with Donald Trump, I can't make a promise that these tariffs will be officially imposed. We'll see if he ends up delaying them, if there's negotiations and more deals to come. But as of right now, okay, that is what is scheduled. So it could cause more volatility, at least for the markets, unless we already priced this in. Now, this is the reason why Jerome Powell said that the Fed has to be very, very cautious. He said that the Fed can wait to see how Donald Trump is going to be reacting. He's going to be waiting to see what happens with our data. And he mentioned that Donald Trump's tariffs alone are not what's affecting the Fed. It's the reaction that the economy, consumers, spending, the labor market, etc., all have on Donald Trump's tariffs. So he made that very clear. He also said, and I quote, "We do not need to be in a hurry, and we are well positioned to wait for greater clarity." So that's what Jerome Powell said. So the Fed is not cutting. They're not in an extreme situation where they're forced to cut right now. That's what he's saying. They have to wait and see as time goes on. And he also mentioned that they're going to be they're in no rush, right? They're just going to hold rates for now, just give it some time. Three more things. Number one, on Monday, it's going to be March 10th, 2025. At 10 o'clock a.m., we have the consumer inflationary expectations. Then we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions coming out after that. So watch that very closely. I also want to add that there's nothing else that's too crazy coming out for earnings. We just have like a lot of retail, nothing else too insane. So keep that in mind. And then last but not least, we have the fear and greed index. This is currently how things are looking. Things are extremely fearful. We're seeing a lot of momentum at extreme fear. There's just so much fear that's building up, especially as the put to call option ratio is going up. And volatility is also looking very, very fearful. So just keep that in mind. So there's lots of fear right now. People are panicking, expecting the market to dump, and we'll have to see what happens as time goes on. But for the time being, with all this fear that's coming out, I do want to say something very, very important. We're going to focus on the charts from this point on. There's a bullish divergence trying to develop on Tesla. And one thing you will see is that we tend to follow the market. So Tesla is not the only thing that's dumping, right? The market as a whole has been coming down like this. If you look at Tesla and you actually compare it to like SPY, the charts are very, very similar, right? And here's the thing you're noticing. When you look at SPY and many others like the QQQ, they're holding their daily 200 EMAs. So if the market could hold its support and tries to make a higher low and rebounds, that can also contribute to helping Tesla try to rebound because the market is controlled by these algorithms that tend to dictate these stocks very similarly. So in that case, I just want to say that if we get a market-wide bounce, just hypothetically, that could also help Tesla. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying that you have to watch for that and watch your levels just to be safe. So one thing that's good about Tesla is the fact that although we've been on this very, very big downtrend, there's a lot of instances where we basically form these divergences. They're very, very slight. Sometimes we form divergences and we see Tesla attempt some kind of rebounds. That does sometimes happen, like right here. We got a temporary rebound, and then there's another instance all the way down here. Another example is like right here. We saw Tesla see about a 30-point bounce. It's a little small. It doesn't look that huge. It's just a temporary bounce once we got this bullish divergence right over here. So we went from like 273 all the way up to about 303 or so for a 30-point bounce before it continued to decline. So in this case, we're forming a very similar bullish divergence. That's the first good piece of news for Tesla. We have a triple bullish divergence, and that typically signifies it's going to try to bounce a little bit. There's a good chance it might attempt to do that. That's the first factor. The second factor is the fact that when you look at the daily chart on Tesla, the daily has a wick forming here in a potential reversal structure. We need confirmation first, so just keep that in mind. So if Tesla ends up dumping, and if we can't hold support around that 260 area, we're going to be at risk of dipping closer to about that 250 area, which is where we have a big support. It's very psychological, and that's where we had that gap support. Also, keep in mind, if we end up losing 240 on Tesla, we do have another gap to fill, but I don't think we're going to be dumping like that. If we manage to hold 260, then there could be an attempt for a rebound. My guts tells me Tesla's going to be looking for a bit of a shuffle right here, and we're going to be looking for something very similar to before. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla does this where we dip a little bit. We see a small dip like this, see where this candlestick happens to be. And then if we can make a higher low here, there's going to be an attempt to get back up towards that 270 area, very close to where this green 20 EMA happens to be. And I think there's a good chance Tesla tests that. Now, if we hypothetically can't hold our lows from Friday, then I'm going to remain bearish. If we fail at 250 on Tesla, yes, we're going to be very, very bearish. We could be dumping to 240 and all the way down to the 220s if 250 fails us. But as long as we're above 260, around that 260 area, if we can reclaim that, there's going to be an attempt to get back up to 270. If we can break that, if the market gets a bigger bounce, we manage to break 270, then we could be looking for an attempt to get back up to about that 285 area. For now, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to focus on 270. Might see a small dip in a bounce. I think we could attempt to get close to 270 for now. The 4-hour has a bullish divergence. The daily chart looks a little bit decent on Tesla, and with the whole market potentially bouncing, that could help Tesla as well. I also want to add on that when you look at SPY, the 4-hour also has a bullish divergence. We try to reclaim this trend line. And then for me to be bearish on the markets, and I'm not saying that this is guaranteed, okay? We need to see SPY lose 5, 6, 8. How come we dipped and instead of losing it, we actually got a bounce and we held our 200 EMA, which is a good sign. So that's a sign that this might try to hold support. So if you're bearish, you want to see us essentially lose 5, 6, 8 and lose this blue trend line. If that fails us, we could be dipping all the way back down towards the low 560s. However, if we manage to hold 5, 6, 8 going into tomorrow and beyond for the week, there's going to be a good chance that we essentially make a lower high than we bounce. Let me actually pull up the 4-hour chart just to make this a little bit easier to see. So going back, I just want to say that there's a very, very good chance that we do this. We see SPY kind of pull back here. If it makes a higher low, whether it's a key fib level around that 570 area, we have consumer inflationary expectations coming out tomorrow, so that might cause a little dip. But then if we could get back above, 580 or so over the next few days, then that could be our attempt to get, a temporary relief move, just temporarily, before we see further downside later on. So I assume a move like this is most likely what's going to be happening, but make sure you watch 5, 6, 8 just to be safe in case we lose that. We could be dumping lower. I'm looking for some kind of rebound just to be safe. Also notice that the QQQ did the exact same thing. If you go to our daily time frame, you'll see that we're technically above our 200 EMA at that 490 area. So we held support, forming a bullish daily candlestick. When you go to the 4-hour time frame, we're holding support, forming a quadruple. I think it's a triple, maybe quadruple bullish divergence. And that typically signifies there could be a bounce coming. That depends, though. We need to get back above 495 at the very least. I do think we're going to test that. So look for some kind of pullback move to about 488 or so. As long as we don't end up losing 480 flats, we could dip a little bit and then try to rebound for a test of 495. If we break that, I think we go back up to about 503 and then 506. So I do anticipate a move like this is very possible for us to try to continue to go higher. But I'm looking for a move like this for now. If we make a higher low, look for a pullback and a bounce, and we'll see how things end up looking as time goes on. For the Russell 2000, we have a 4-hour bullish divergence. I want to see us get back above 207. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially the 210s. If we end up losing 200 flat, we're looking for a bigger dip. So watch to see if 200 holds on the Russell 2000. As long as we're above 200, we're looking pretty good. I want to see us reclaim 207. If that breaks, we're looking for a bigger attempt higher, especially with this bullish divergence. That makes me a little bit more optimistic. The daily got a good close, so I hope that we end up seeing us break above that resistance, and there's potential in the Russell 2000. For ES, we have a bullish divergence. We're forming a nice wick right over here. If we break past 5,800, I'm looking for an attempt to push more. The daily chart looks a little bit more promising because we're seeing this big wick right over here. I think that there's a chance that this might see a pullback first to start things off this resistance. As long as we make a higher low, we don't end up losing like 5,700. We're looking for an attempt to get back up to 5,825. If that breaks, we're looking for a bigger push. If we make a higher low, we could bounce. If we end up losing support at 5,750, we could be looking for a dump. But I think there's a good chance we attempt some kind of rebound so far. So I think ES may make a higher low and try to bounce for 5,825. So watch to see if that ends up being the case. We need to break that for us to continue this pump to go even higher. So watch and see if that ends up happening. I'm looking for a higher low and a bounce to be coming for 5,825. Watch and see if that ends up being the case. For NQ has this resistance where this blue trend line is. We rejected. We tried to break through this, and now we're testing that blue trend line as our support again. We held 20,000 on NQ, which is a good sign. I just don't want to see us lose 20,000. As long as we're above that, we could be looking for an attempt for about 20,600. I think there's a good chance we try to go to that looking at the daily time frame. So we'll see. There might be a little rebound move for 20,600. If we reject here, we're looking for a dip lower. If we could break through this resistance at 20,600, we're looking for an attempt for 21,000 next. Watch and see if that ends up being the case for NQ. Bitcoin's bearish. It's going to be dipping a little bit because of the fact that it had like a buy the rumor sell the news event with Donald Trump signing in order to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So keep that in mind. Might see a move like this where Bitcoin continues to dip towards 80,000, if not 77,000. And then we'll see if we get a bounce after that. There could be another pullback move coming before the market attempts to rebound later. And I think Bitcoin's kind of like following that trend as well. Nvidia looks a little bullish on the daily. We need to see it hold above 110. If that holds, keep in mind we have this gap to fill all the way up here around that like 117 area. And if we end up failing, if we can't hold like 110, we're looking for a bigger dip. So my gut tells me we could be looking for a move down here to like 110 or so, and then a bounce back up to fill that gap. As long as that holds, we're going to be looking quite good. If 110 fails us, we could be dipping a lot more, but I'm looking for a higher load and a bounce to fill that gap towards 117. For Tesla, Tesla looks quite good on the 4-hour time frame and also on the daily. Like I said before, if the whole market tries to get some kind of rebound move, that could help Tesla to some extent. I think what's going to happen is we will try to test our 20 EMA on Tesla, by the way. So if we get like a pullback and a bounce, 272 could be retested. We'll see if we break through that or not. There is the bullish divergence still developing. So as long as we don't end up losing like 260 and then 250, I think there's a good chance we make a higher low compared to our low on Friday and we see some kind of rebound move. On Aapl, I want to mention that Apple's looking not as great. The fact that we're below this trend line right here, so we bounced off this, bounced off this, bounced off this, then we got a rejection move. Despite that, we formed a divergence, and we're seeing this trying to reverse. We need to see this get back above 240 for this to bounce. There's a chance it's going to attempt to do so. There might be like a pullback first before it tries to break 240. If that breaks, we could be going a little bit higher off this bullish divergence. We could also be forming like a nice accumulation right here for a dip and a bounce. So if 240 holds, we're looking for a bigger push even higher. For Netflix is looking a little bit better on a 4-hour time frame. We did call out 870. It actually went a little bit lower than that. So we filled this imbalance. This is our support right here. We actually held it. That's a good sign. This could be pushing for 900 very soon now as a result of this. So we'll see. We could be making a lower high, or a higher low, and try to get back up to this imbalance fill. I think that's what we're going to be going for. Then we'll see if we get a rejection off 900. Do we reject back down, or do we get a rebound? I think we test 900. We'll see if we bounce. So keep that in mind. That's going to be a very, very key level. Now, MSTR a little bit weak right here on the 4-hour time frame. If we can't hold 284, we're looking for a dump back down to about 275, and I think there's a good chance that might be happening, a rebound and a dump like that. So please keep that in mind. There's a good chance of that potentially panning out. For Celsius, the 4-hour is looking a little bit more bullish. We have an inverse head and shoulders like pattern. As long as we don't end up losing like 26, we're going to be looking for a dip and a bounce back up towards 28. And we could be going even higher off this inverse head and shoulders. So I think there's a good chance we try to bounce for 28 plus. For Supermicro, we also have a slanted inverse head and shoulders here. If we break past 39.61, we're looking for a 10 for 42. So I think there's a good chance that we see a rebound move and we try to get back up towards 39.6. For Palantir, we are stuck literally in the middle between supply and demand. We have this support around 79, and we have this resistance around this 91 area. So if we break past this resistance, we're looking for 87.18. If that breaks, we're looking for 90. If you reject here, we're looking for a dip, but I think there's a good chance we try to push for 87.18. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. I see potential in this. For Rivian, we want to see this thing break past 11.29. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt for 11.5. There's a slight bullish divergence here. Let's see if we break 11.29, and we'll see if 11.5 breaks. The 4-hour on SoFi is looking a bit more bullish. We have a 4-hour bullish divergence that's developing. I need to see this break past 13.04. If that breaks, we're looking for 13.38. So we'll see if we break past this or not. For AMD, AMD is going to be trying to rebound off an inverse head and shoulders. If we manage to break past 101.75, we're looking for an attempt for 103. If we end up losing 98, we're looking for a dip. So I think we could be making a higher low before it tries to push for 102. ARM has a nice double bottom here. It looks pretty good. If we can make a higher low, we're looking for an attempt to get back up towards 129. We have an imbalance over here, so we'll see how that goes. So it looks a bit more bullish. Coin is looking decent. I think it's going to dip a little bit, though, because of Bitcoin sinking right now. So there's going to be a pullback move. I'm not sure if this low will hold. As long as we can hold that low, we could be looking for an attempt to rebound like this. But I think there's going to be a temporary dip coming to about 207 to 205 before it tries to bounce. So just keep that in mind. Amazon's not looking that great. We're technically making lower highs and lower lows. However, we have a triple bullish divergence developing on this. And I want to see it break 203. If we break 203, we could fly to 210 plus. If we don't break 203, we could be rejecting. So I think there's a good chance it's going to try to test that resistance. If we get some kind of pullback move, then push for 203. We want to see that break for this thing to really start to go. So keep that in mind. Um, Microsoft and Meta also have a similar trend, bullish divergence. I want to see this make a higher low. If we do that, we're looking for 639 very soon. On Microsoft, we're looking for an attempt to break past 394. If that breaks, we're looking for 398. Could see a temporary move up. There's also like the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders. We need to hold the low from Friday. As long as we hold 386, if we can make a higher low, we're looking for a bounce. We need to break 394. If that breaks, we're looking for 400. Google needs to break 176.93. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt to get back up towards 178. On GameStop, I want to see 24.39 break to push for 24.95. For AMC, we're trying to break past 3.09. If it breaks, we're looking for essentially 3.17. DJT needs to break past 22.7. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt for 23.5. The VIX got a rejection here. There's a slight bearish divergence on it, a very slight one. And then we also have this gap to fill. So if we lose 23, we're looking for a dip to about 21.8 on the VIX. Eventually back down towards 20.95. The 10-year is kind of decent, has nice inverse head shoulders that could be pushing for 4.38. And the dollar index is looking for 104.43 as potential target, so we'll see how it goes. So that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. Please have an absolutely fantastic rest of your weekend. I'm not promising the market's going to bounce or dump or try to do anything in particular. My main objective is to be unbiased, that we could dump or pump depending on our levels. So make sure you watch your levels. But based off the bullish divergences and the fact that we held support on SPY and the fact that we're holding support on Tesla as well, makes me suspect there might be some kind of upside move coming. So I do think Tesla might be testing 272 very soon. And if we could break that, we could be trying to push even more. So there might be a temporary move upcoming, in my personal opinion. I lean more in that direction for the time being, but always remember to follow the charts, follow the price action, remain unbiased. I'm just here to give you guys what my assessment is, just to give you guys an idea of how I see things panning out and what I lean towards. But keep in mind, we do have some more tariffs coming from Trump, which could affect things. So be very, very open with everything that's going on. And once again, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. Have a good day, guys. I'll be back tomorrow before market open for another update. Until then, enjoy the weekend and peace out.